Portland, Oregon is home to the American Cider Association, the folks who put on CiderCon every year. So far in my CiderCon adventure, I've been to Chicago, Illinois, Oakland, California, and Richmond, Virginia. In 2024, the adventure took me to one of, if not the most well-known location for cider in the United States and the world, the Pacific Northwest. CiderCon 2024 in Portland was everything I expected and more. Crazy weather, good friends, and plenty of new beverages to try. Even though I spent over a week between Oregon and Washington, I feel like I just scratched the surface of what this part of the country has to offer cider enthusiasts. From small town to big city, I tried to see it all on this adventure. Let's get into it. My name is Jay Cooper, and I'm the CEO and founder of Cider Finder, an app designed to bring cider makers and enthusiasts a little bit closer. I'm on a journey around the United States to meet cider makers, visit cideries, find fans of hard cider, and learn as much as I can about one of the strongest segments of the alcohol industry in this country. Come along with me on my travels from coast to coast as I attend the biggest events in hard cider in America to learn as much as I can about the industry and all of the steps between fruit on tree and liquid in bottle. There's a lot more going on behind the curtain than you realize. I'm on a quest to learn everything I possibly can to become the Cider Finder. Well, I made it out to Oregon for CiderCon 2024. Relatively long flight. Went from home to Chicago, out to Portland. So the final leg of the flight was about 4.5 hours. Got out, pouring rain. It's like what you'd expect out here in the Pacific Northwest. And then had about an hour's drive ahead of me once I got to the airport in Portland to get out here to Hood River. It's about an hour away, about 50 miles or so. And rode out here, mountains, so you can't have the kind of grid pattern we have in the Midwest where everything runs either north-south or east-west. It's a lot more windy roads. So windy road combined with darkness combined with pouring rain for an hour made for quite an adventure on Interstate 84. But I made it before it got too cold, where everything started freezing. So it was rain when I fell asleep last night. Woke up this morning, looked outside, there was a dusting of snow on everything. So the cool air had moved in while I was asleep last night. Learning from the lessons of 2020, I decided to explore a bit of Oregon beyond Portland, so I arrived a few days before the convention began and spent a couple of nights in Hood River, about an hour by car east of the Portland Metro. The drive out there from the Portland airport was a bit of an adventure. The interstate runs between the Columbia River on one side and mountains on the other, and the entire stretch between the city and Hood River runs through heavily forested parkland, so it was pitch black apart from the headlights of oncoming traffic. Hood River has 3 cideries, one of which functions more as a restaurant that makes cider. Just before I set out to my first stop, my phone buzzed at me and informed me that there was a blizzard warning for the area starting the next morning, so time was of the essence. My first stop was Double Mountain Brewery. Something I noticed was that beer and cider were much more intertwined here than in other parts of the country. Many places that started out as breweries moved into cider production to complement their beer. Double Mountain offered a flight of their entire selection of cider except for their ice cider, which had to be purchased separately. I started with the flight of the 4 regular strength beverages, 3 ciders and 1 Perry. As usual, the Perry was my favorite of this bunch. My overall favorite was the ice cider, one of the few things that outranks Perry on my list. The tap room was one of those places where, if I lived near there, I probably would visit quite often. I wound up having lunch there as well, before moving on to my next stop. You can't turn down a BLT sandwich, and theirs was quite good. My next stop involved heading up the mountain further into town to Working Hands Brewery. Again, this was a beer place that also became a cidery in order to bring more people into the establishment. They even had the place split where those under 21 could go and enjoy food and non-alcoholic drinks, while those of us of age could try the adult stuff. I grabbed a flight of 5 different ciders, nearly their entire selection. Juicebox, their semi-sweet cider, was my favorite, and I ended up taking a can of it back to the hotel when I left. By stop number 3 at Crush Cider Cafe, it had gotten pretty chilly, and a few flurries were starting to fly through the air. I was in luck. Not only did Crush have an amazing selection of ciders to choose from, they also had an amazing chili that complemented the weather perfectly. There were so many ciders to choose from, I decided to get a flight of 6 in an effort to get a sampling of a wide variety of what they made. Had I known there were so many options, I would have made more time in my day to spend here, as I was there the last couple of hours they were open and the blizzard conditions were closing in on Hood River. Unfortunately, I lost the next day to snow, a sign of things to come for the rest of the trip. I made the most of it though, sleeping in and getting my body situated to Pacific time from Central time. So it's Sunday morning, last morning out here in Hood River, getting everything packed up and ready to go back to Portland just for a night. Tomorrow morning, this time tomorrow, I'll be loading up on a tour bus to head to Seattle to visit 6 different cider makers up there. It really should be a fun adventure. I had originally meant Sunday to be the day off, as I was going on a cider tour to Seattle on Monday and Tuesday. Because of the blizzard on Saturday, I decided to make a stop on the way back to Portland at McMenamin's Edgefield, a resort property dating back to 1911. It looked like there were a number of fun outdoor things to do in the warmer weather, but since it was January, all of the activity was happening inside the main building. The entrance to the cidery was in the rear of the building. Before sampling some cider, I stopped in at the restaurant on the main floor for a cheeseburger and fries. I then went down into the cellar, where the tasting room was, and worked my way through the menu. They had both cider and beer available, but no wine, contrary to the signage outside. I first had a flight of the 4 standard ciders: apple, cranberry tangerine, lemon spice, and blackberry, followed by samples of their muscat and Earl Grey ciders. I love the blackberry cider, so I ended up having a full pour of that cider as well. I also had a great conversation with the staff, finding out that the blizzard we had in the mountains was an ice storm at lower elevation in Portland. Luckily, the roads were clear enough to get downtown and checked into the hotel for the night to prepare for the 2-day journey to and from Seattle. I'm going to be getting on the bus here in just a few minutes. We're going to be heading north to Seattle from Portland. We'll be stopping for lunch at Locust Cider in one of the kind of Seattle area suburbs. We'll be visiting Yonder Cider today, checking into the hotel, and dinner at what looks like a really interesting, fancy restaurant. So it's going to be a fun day today, and then we'll be coming back tomorrow. We'll visit 3 more cideries tomorrow, but I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Just looking forward to Locust Cider and Yonder Cider today, and then kind of all the camaraderie and ability to do a little sightseeing maybe in Seattle. It was an early morning loading everything onto the bus in the cold and heading north along Interstate 5 from Portland to Seattle. The bus ride was pretty uneventful, but there was a lot to look at out the window, especially as we got closer to the Seattle metro area. We were originally supposed to visit 5 different cider makers on this 2-day excursion, but one of the Tuesday stops was canceled in order for us to get back to Portland before the next ice storm rolled in. The 4 cideries we still made it to were Locust Cider in Gig Harbor, Yonder Cider and Seattle Cider in Seattle, and Schilling Cider's Washington Taproom and Production Facility in Auburn. The stop we missed out on was Greenwood Cider's facility north of downtown Seattle. I thought the organizers of this trip did a great job balancing makers of different sizes and styles. Locust's facility was the smallest, while Seattle Cider and Schilling both had relatively large production floors and storage for their finished products. Yonder's production doesn't take place in Seattle, and they share the tap room with a craft beer producer. We were treated to curated flights at Locust and Seattle, and Yonder let us pick our own flights from all of the ciders on tap. Schilling had several of their ciders in cans on each of the tables in the tasting room, allowing us to have as much or as little of each cider as we desired. Locust Cider was our first stop for cider and lunch. We sampled 4 of their ciders: blackberry, lavender lemongrass, honey pear, and their dry cider. Like usual, the blackberry cider was my favorite, just edging out the honey pear. As we learned a bit about Locust's story, we got to see production in action as the canning line was running.
After lunch, but before we moved back onto the bus, we could move upstairs to the tap room to try any other ciders on the menu or purchase multi-packs to take with us. I bought a 6-pack of the blackberry on the way out of the tap room to bring home. After a short drive into the city, we made it to Yonder's Tap Room, which they share with Bale Breaker Brewing out of Yakima, Washington. There were 17 ciders on tap, of which we could pick 4 for our flights. When there are this many choices, it can be a challenge to pick just 4 in order to get a complete picture of their production capabilities. My 4 picks were Cashmere, a cranberry cherry bitter orange cider, Sunny Slope, a pink grapefruit and lemon cider, Anniversary 2023, a blend of several ciders from that year, and a single varietal wine sap cider. There were a couple of other single varietals I would have loved to try as well, but they lost out to the 4 I picked. If we'd had more time, I would have also tried their Pommeau separately from the flight. I love Pommeau, but sometimes it doesn't love me back. Just as quickly as we arrived, the group was back on the bus, heading to our hotel for the night and to dinner, a 3-course meal with cider pairings, followed by a bit of social time before another early morning.
So the restaurant was only a couple blocks away. Amazing dinner. They did cider pairings with different food. They had a salad course, a main course, which was a steak with a cheesy polenta. Amazing. I wish I could have had a second serving. That stuff was amazing. And then kind of an interesting kind of coconut dessert with chocolate pomegranate glaze on top. And they paired that with Pommeau. Luckily, it was just a little bit of Pommeau, so not too dangerous. But the flavors of the dessert and the Pommeau together really, it kind of neutralized the booziness of the Pommeau, which was nice. Had fun at dinner. Decided to call it a night since we'd been up and going since early yesterday. Called it a night kind of early. And here we are. Bus leaves in just a few minutes. The weather down in Portland is going to be kind of dicey this afternoon and evening, I guess. Ice storm. So they've already canceled one of our stops. We were supposed to go to Greenwood Cider. They've decided to skip that one, unfortunately. But if the weather does hold out in Portland, if we can get back at a relatively normal time, 4 o'clock-ish instead of the 6 o'clock we were supposed to get back.
Our third cidery stop, the first of day 2, was Seattle Cider, a cider maker I'm quite familiar with through my time stewarding at Glint Cap. Seattle Cider usually enters multiple ciders each year, and they proudly display the results of their work in the tap room. Through stewarding, I'd had most of the ciders that they had in the curated flight each of us were given. Still quite delicious now as they were then. We were split into 2 groups, where half would stay in the tap room and the other half went on a guided tour of the production facility. I couldn't believe how large their facility was. As they explained, they slowly had taken over more and more of the building as their needs continued to grow, so the facility was a bit of a labyrinth. I bought a coffee mug to take home right before we were all hurried onto the bus and off to Schilling Cider's facility south of the city. Luckily, lunch was served in the tasting room, as I hadn't had more than a cup of coffee and a muffin before we left the hotel in the morning. A taco bar paired with Schilling Ciders hit the spot. Surprisingly, of the ciders they provided for sampling, my favorite was the cherry, non-alcoholic cider. The leftover unopened cans made their way onto the tour bus for the return trip, and I was able to snag one of those cans to bring home. I had to skip the tour of the production floor because I received a phone call that the hotel in which I was supposed to stay when we got back to Portland had a water pipe break and was uninhabitable, so I quickly had to find another hotel for the rest of my time in Oregon. Thankfully, I was able to find another place to stay. Since I might be stuck in the hotel for 24 hours or so when we got back, I made sure the hotel had a restaurant and coffee available in the lobby. You know, the important stuff. They got us on the bus as quickly as possible and we were off, back south to Portland, in an effort to beat the storm as it came off the Pacific Ocean. We made it back with minimal time to spare before the rain began.
Back on the bus we got, and we just drove as fast as legally possible back to Portland before the ice storm got here. Got checked into the hotel and all that. Getting to the hotel was fun because there were a couple blocks where they just hadn't bothered to shovel at all since they got some snow, which made dragging a large wheeled suitcase nearly impossible. So it was, I had to stop and catch my breath a couple of times because it was slightly uphill and basically dragging 50 plus pounds of dead weight plus a couple other bags that I had from the tour. So it was an adventure getting in here, but electricity's been on, doing okay.
I woke up to an icy wonderland outside, and I refused to venture out of the hotel until the afternoon, right before Cider Share. There were sections between the hotel and the convention center that had been treated, and other sections that felt like death traps. All of the restaurants outside of the hotel were closed due to weather, as I suspected they would be. I made it to Cider Share without falling down outside, an important milestone on a trip like this. The event was split between 2 rooms, one with Pacific Northwest producers and the other with everyone else. I did a quick sweep of both rooms before I began sampling, both to scout the cider makers in attendance, but to also find friends with whom I could sample. Like many years, on the way out of the Cider Share, I was handed unopened ciders to enjoy later. Many pourers don't want to haul their samples all the way back to their hotel rooms at the end of the night. So I did what any reasonable person does and invented the pocket cider, ready for on-the-go consumption. After a night on the very icy town, it was back to the hotel for a couple of hours of sleep.
So it's Thursday morning. I'm a little worse for wear. That just means the Cider Share was amazing last night, and not just that, but the fun afterwards. So then made my way down to the lobby. Lobby seemed to be kind of the nexus of activity down there. Ended up having a couple more ciders down there. Went out. Was going to go out with a group of folks, but as you can probably tell, my head was not feeling great, so ended up just coming back to the hotel here.
My first scheduled tasting session of this year's CiderCon wasn't until the afternoon, so I had a little time to recover before diving in again. I joined the convention at lunch on Thursday morning, and then went to the tasting called Pear Necessities, which featured 4 amazing pairings, including one from Oliver's Cider and one from Ross on Wye. This session was worth the price of admission. Later that afternoon, there was a happy hour in the trade show, right by the Michigan Cider Association trailer, which, for some reason this year, was blessed by Cider Jesus. After the happy hour, several of my cider friends and I went across the street to the New York Cider Association tasting, which had become its own thing since the first pop-up in Richmond, Virginia, and formalized as a separate event in Chicago at CiderCon 2023. I'd had a great time at the Richmond pop-up and the full event in Chicago, so I immediately grabbed a ticket when they became available. The New York Cider Association hit it out of the park once again in 2024. I was able to try every cider available, and the mini donuts and other hors d'oeuvres were amazing. They finally had to kick us out of the space at the end of the event, so a bunch of us walked back across the street to another super secret cider exchange event in the space where the Cider Share was held the previous evening.
I don't have cider to exchange, but I guess they love my personality, so they invite me each year. And again, some amazing stuff. Someone ended up bringing an entire flight of Cider Riot ciders that they had been hanging on to, one of them since 2014. So impressive. You got to try just a few drops of each one of them, and I feel like it got a little better over time. Interesting to hear what other people think who got to try a little bit of each year from 2014 on until they closed. So just so much great stuff. Talking to people about the app, lots of excitement at least among the folks here. But that's kind of my core audience, is the sort of folks who go to cider events like the stuff this week. So yeah, got in a little after 1 a.m. and we're back at it again this morning. At least it's the sun has started to come out a little bit, which is amazing. Haven't seen that in like a week. It's been pretty gray and hazy and icy and rainy and snowy out in the mountains a few days ago. So just nice to see the sun for the first time pretty much on this trip, maybe second time on the trip.
It was another late morning on Friday, joining the convention for my second tasting of the event, New Frontiers in Traditional European Cider Regions. My favorite was the Spanish entry, which was a combination of ice cider, which I'd had before, and fire cider, which was a new style to me. I really loved the dark color of the cider, and the taste was out of this world. I also really liked the low ABV Perry from England. It was really refreshing. After lunch, I strolled through the trade show before it closed, before returning to the hotel for a quick nap. I knew it was going to be another late night, starting with the Cider Canada party on the top floor of the host hotel. I'm not exactly sure how we crammed so many people into a hotel suite, but we made it work. Then a bunch of us left the hotel and went to Schilling's Portland tap room for the Michigan Cider Association tap takeover. It was a chilly night, but the fire pits on the patio felt great. Our final stop for the night was a place called The Place, which was about as warm and humid as the hotel suite was during the Canadian event. They had several Pacific Northwest ciders to purchase by the glass and several coolers full of ciders to either drink there or purchase to take home. Had I not been sampling cider for the better part of a week, I would have stayed a bit longer at The Place, but I was pretty worn out by midnight or so, and I had one more day of cider adventure to go.
The event today, the Artisans Cider Summit that I'm going to in just a little bit here. Sounds like they're going to have some stuff available to buy. So I've got a little room left in the suitcase. I've got a bunch of stuff that I got on the Seattle tour and a couple things I walked away from CiderCon with, but would love to finish off that little space in the suitcase on different things I can take home. So that's the plan today. We'll see how this Cider Summit thing goes. It'll probably be a lot like the one in Chicago. Sounds like there's more food available, which is good. It's more of a tasting event, food, beverage pairing tasting event, more than the Chicago event tends to be, which is more of just ciders by themselves, with pretzel necklace to neutralize your palates and give you a little carbohydrate boost during the event. So we will see how it goes.
The Artisans Cider Summit was my only scheduled event on my final full day in Portland. I've attended the Chicago Cider Summit in years past and enjoyed that event, so I was looking forward to an event on their home turf in the Pacific Northwest. I was one of the first people admitted into the event, so I had my pick of where to start. The unfortunate thing about sampling cider all week is that by the time you get to an event like this, you've already had many of the ciders available. However, about 70% of the event were ciders I hadn't yet tried over the course of the week, and a couple more were ciders that I wanted to sample again. There were also some ciders available for sale, and I bought a couple to fill out the remainder of the room in my suitcase for the trip home. After a long 10-day trip to the Pacific Northwest, it was time to head home. I had a lot of fun with old friends and new, had a chance to sample some of the best cider in the country and the world, and brave some treacherous weather, the worst of the entire winter. I really hope to make it out that direction again, preferably during the summer. We'll see where CiderCon decides to land when it comes to the West Coast in 2028, if the current rotation holds up. CiderCon 2026 is scheduled for Providence, Rhode Island, another place I've yet to visit. We'll see what the future brings. Keep enjoying that cider.